It's setting up. Takes just a couple seconds.
All right.
All right, we are streaming. Mr. Belcher, thank you for being here. Everybody, welcome, Mr. Belcher. Looking forward to hearing from you today. I'll hand it over to you.
Awesome. Well, hello, everyone. Hope you can hear me okay. My name is Daniel Belcher. Like your director said, I was a drum major for the Blue Knights for the past 4 seasons. I just aged out in 2019, so 2016 through 2019. I am originally from Cincinnati, Ohio. I was a drum major in high school from a school called Milford High School. I marched WGI winds for 4 seasons with Rhythm X winds, and I currently live in Montreal, Canada, and I study electrical engineering. It's awesome to be with you all today. Kind of a breakdown of what we're going to be doing. I'm going to go kind of lightning speed through the basics of conducting. Usually this would be something that would be taught in a few hours, but I want to get you the information because there's no way that I can give one-on-one feedback with 196 of you. So this is going to be me giving you a lot of information for you and some exercises for you to practice later with the information you get today. So we're going to go fast, but I want you to get that information, okay? Feel free as I'm teaching, if you want to practice along or mimic what I'm doing, absolutely do that. If you just want to take notes, you want to watch, that's totally fine as well, up to you. Cool. So with conducting, we're going to start with our posture. Let me make sure you can see me. Let's see here. A little lower here. All right, so the most important foundation of conducting, it seems super simple, is your posture. It's just like when you're marching, this sets up the foundation for you to be able to use your body correctly, right? Anything that I teach after here for the next few minutes, if your posture is incorrect or a little wonky, it's all going to be negated, okay? So just like when we're marching, we want to start with having our shoulders over our hips, over our ankles. You can't see my ankles, but I promise my hips are over my ankles, okay? You don't want to be leaning forward. You don't want to be leaning back. Conducting is a very athletic venture, and you're going to be applying a lot of pressure to your body if you're doing this the right way, especially in the lower back area. You don't want to be leaning forward. You're going to be putting a lot of tension, right? Or leaning back. You're going to be hurting yourself, okay? So this is to have a solid foundation. Conducting needs to be healthy. We don't want to hurt ourselves, okay? So we have shoulders over hips, over ankles, and we're going to want to take our chest. If I'm standing like a normal human being, like I'm just talking to you in a room, my chest is going to be kind of facing just straight forward, like a normal person, okay? When I go to conduct, I'm going to lift my chest up a little bit. You can see here, I wore a black shirt, so you can see the contrast, right? I'm going to lift my chest just a little bit, so it's pointing upward, okay? That's for 2 reasons. That's for presence, and so when I go to conduct, I have a solid basis with my back muscles to support my arms as I'm moving them around, okay? That'll help you be more comfy, and it'll help you use some bigger muscles to support yourself, all right? Alignment, move the chest up a little bit. There you go. Your feet can be together. They can be apart. Depends what you're doing in your show or whatever you're conducting at that point, whatever's comfy for you right now, okay? From there, we're going to work on our set position. This is also super, super important. This has to be solid. Just like posture, if you have a wonky set position that's like way out here, that's obviously going to be a lot of different mechanics versus if you have a wonky set position over here, right? Those are going to be 2 completely different ways to move your arms. So this is super important. Every human body is different. Some people have really long arms in proportion to their torso. Some people have shorter arms. This is a way to find a good base for the set position, and then there are some guides to tweak yourself a little bit. So what you want to do is you want to imagine that there is a huge tree in front of you that is exactly the right radius for you to just barely hug, okay? So I'm going to press myself against the tree. I'm not going to hug it like this. I'm going to press myself against the tree. I'm going to wrap my arms around it, and I'm going to keep my shoulders in the same place. So I'm not going to do this, okay? Standing like this, my shoulders are right here. I'm going to keep them there. And I'm just going to hug that tree like this. I'm going to reach out, and I'm going to make a circle because trees are circular. I'm not hugging like a strange oblong tree this way or this way, as round as possible. And I'm keeping my shoulders back. You can see I'm keeping the same posture we talked about earlier, right? I'm hugging that tree, and I'm going to have my two middle fingers touching each other, and they're going to cross right at my belly button. So there's my belly button right here, hugging that tree. These are in line, okay? Got my nice round, kind of really awkward hug, like you're the shorter person in the hug, right? You're going to hug around their waist. And then you're going to take where your elbows are. You can see where my elbow is, this elbow too, and you're going to leave them exactly where they are. So I'm not going to move them in space. This would be moving them in space. Leave them there, and I'm just going to rotate so that my forearms are parallel to the ground. So leaving the elbows there, boom. Now my forearms are parallel to the ground. Now for me, I have some kind of long arms, so this is a little further out than would be normal. So I can recognize that, and I'm just going to pull in a little bit. Maybe you have shorter arms and you ended up here. Maybe you got super long arms and you ended up here. You can look at my body for reference and see that from the midpoint of my torso, there's about a fist length or fist and a half length forward until my elbow. And then the same thing on the side, there's about a fist to a fist and a half length away from my body. So if you have super long arms, you might have been really far out, right? If I can like pretend to make my arms longer, your elbows might be like way out here. If that's you, maybe bring it in a little bit. So you can look at me and see a good basis for what that might look like. My forearms are flat to the ground. That's super important. We don't want to be up here. We don't want to be down here. Nice and flat. Your computer screen is really helpful because you have a nice base with like whatever's on your computer to see on your screen that your arm is nice and flat, right? I can even just lower myself to kind of touch the bottom of my computer there. So that's our set position. When you're starting out conducting, you want to walk through that over and over again. Okay, every time you go to conduct in the beginning, you want to walk through that process. I'm walking up to the tree. I press myself against the tree. It's kind of a weird sequence, but circle my arms around the tree just barely in front of the belly button there. Keep the elbows where they're at, shoulders back. Rotate. Boom. And then whatever adjustments I had to make, I'll do that. So for me, I bring my arms a little further back. So there we go. I just adjusted it 3 or 4 inches. And there's my set position. Cool. Hand shape. What you want to do is like you're giving somebody a handshake. I just reach out, right? I don't give somebody a handshake with some strange blade hand. I don't come at them like I'm going to chop them. And I don't go limp noodle, right? Hopefully you're not that person. So just a nice, normal, solid handshake. You're not tensing your hand. When you look at the fingers, there's going to be just a little bit of light between them. I'm not squeezing my hand like crazy, just nice and relaxed. We're going for the shape. We don't want a lot of tension, okay? So you have that nice handshake hand. I have some weird robotic double handshake going on here, and I just turn it. That's all I do, right? Your thumb, you don't want it to be down. That means you have to flex your thumb to be doing that, and you don't need to tuck it. Just let it sit normally, just like a handshake. You're going in, you don't want to clip the person's hand with your thumb, right? Cool, that should be nice and relaxed. As we're doing all of this, as you set up your set position, your posture, and as you conduct, you need to be relaxed, okay? That is a huge, huge part of conducting, super, super important. You cannot be tense. And a lot of younger conductors, that's where they start. Me, when I was in high school and even my first year of drum corps, I would hold my breath like endlessly as I was conducting, right? It's athletic. You want to get it right. There's so many like particular things. My hand has to be here and has to move in this way and hit this point, and I need to be in time, that we freeze up and we get tense, and it's going to not make your conducting look good, and you're going to get exhausted. Okay, you're going to get exhausted. You need to breathe. I'm sure you've probably done it in the beginning of performing in marching band as well. You get out in your first show, and you're super tense, and you go to play at some point, and you're like, wow, I'm way more out of breath than I was in rehearsal, right? You don't want that. Got to breathe the whole time. What I tell people when I'm working with them is that you should be able to talk to me normally as you're conducting, right? So as I'm conducting, I can talk normally. That seems like very intuitive. That's way harder than you think it is to actually be able to just hold a normal conversation and conduct. So if you can be talking to yourself while you're conducting, while you're practicing, you're doing it right. It takes practice, okay? So we broke down our set position, right? We have our handshake, nice little handshake hands, relaxed. We can breathe. We can talk while we're doing this, okay? The next important thing to start conducting, a lot of people like to start with the flick. We like to start with this and then build in motion. I don't like to start there. Okay, I'm a little different. I like to talk about how we move through space and time. Okay, that is a majorly important part of conducting, is not just how we make this one point in time look good, but how we make everything else in space look good. If you've ever watched a band, okay, and their drum majors seem to be together, like you're looking at their ictuses and they're hitting at the same time, right? Drum major 1, drum major 2, they're hitting, but they look off, right? Maybe you haven't been able to explain it. Why do they look off, but I can still see their ictus is the same, right? It's probably because they're moving through space differently, okay? So some examples, some leading trains of thought with this, there's a few ways to move. We have constant velocity conducting, which is where your hands are moving the same speed all the time, and it's kind of robotic, all right? So it looks like this. My hands are moving the same speed all the time, and I just rapidly turn them around on the beat and on the and count, right? So this would be constant velocity. We have the wait longer, move faster technique. There's one drum corps on the East Coast that likes to use this one. You do this. You pause at the top and you wait for a long time, and then you basically just explode down into your ictus, right? So if I'm those two drum majors and I'm conducting, I can hit my ictus at the same way if I'm doing this and I'm doing this. But how different are those going to look if I'm on the field trying to go between two drum majors, right? That's going to look crazy different, okay? Another common one that a lot of people do, and these are all the wrong things, by the way, for what I'm going to teach you. These are all the wrong things. The next one is what I call reverse conducting, where you slow down into your ictus. What is the ictus? The ictus is where you are hitting. I should have explained that. Thank you. That's a great question. The ictus is where you are hitting your beats, where you're enunciating the beat. Okay, so when I set up my set position, this is where my ictus is going to be all the time, right there. I'm conducting. Where you're seeing the beat is the ictus. Cool. Another way that is not the correct way to move through space, I call it reverse conducting. You see it a lot in younger conductors. You slow down into the ictus and then you pull away. It looks like this. You've probably seen that a lot, I'm sure. That's a really common one. A few years ago, there was a commercial for State Farm or Geico or something where it was a guy with a fishing rod, and he had $1 on the end of the fishing line in like some department store. And the customer was trying to get it, and he kept pulling it away. It's like, oh, you almost had it. You almost had it. It's the same idea. You can't predict that, right? You don't know when I'm going to pull away. I can go slower, but you don't know when it's going to happen, right? Geico, yeah, somebody's got my back. We know what I'm talking about. That one was a few years ago. I didn't know if people had seen it.
Hey, Mr. Belcher.
Yeah.
There was a good question. What could you specify is an ictus? What is an ictus?
Yeah. Ictus is, like I was saying, it is where you enunciate the beat. All right. So set position, this is where it's going to happen. Okay. It can be in different places if I'm conducting in different styles, right? But for right now, it's going to be right where our set position was. Ictus, 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 ictus. Okay. Right where you're enunciating it. See some Geico memes in the chat. That's awesome. Okay, so those are all the wrong way to move. Thinking about how you move through space is incredibly important. Different people teach different things, but if you're in a drum major team, as long as you're all doing the same thing, that is years better than all being separately really good at different ways of moving through space. All right. The way that I like to teach is called natural gravity conducting. Okay. So your hands are going to mimic like they're an object falling from gravity, just like you see basically every day, right? Like all of you have, you know, 1.5 decades worth of experience watching things fall. People naturally understand what it looks like when things fall. So you want to use that to your advantage so people can predict your conducting. They can anticipate it, right? What you don't want is people to react to your conducting because they will always be just another smidge behind. And that makes your life harder when you're trying to get people to play together, right? You want them to be able to see where your ictus is going to be when you're here, 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 right? When I'm doing this, you don't really know when I'm going to hit my ictus unless you're really like scream counting in your head, right? They want it to be super easy. If you look away and look back, you pretty much know what's going to happen. So natural gravity conducting. Imagine a ball, like a bouncy ball, tennis ball, basketball, dropping, okay? I hold the ball, and I drop it. From the very top, 0 speed, it's not moving. As it moves towards the ground, it accelerates, so it gets faster and faster and faster, and the fastest point is when it hits the ground, okay? The very fastest point when it hits the ground. And we're gonna pretend we live in a physically ideal world, and the ball will bounce back up at exactly the same speed, okay? So we're gonna ignore, for all you physics people who love that kind of stuff, we're gonna ignore air friction, we're gonna ignore surface friction, all that stuff. The ball is gonna hit the ground, it's gonna bounce back up at the same speed. It's basically gonna be an instant that it hits the ground. And as it goes up, it's going to slow down and slow down and slow down until it gets back up to the top and it's 0 speed again. So I'm sure all of you can imagine what it looks like to drop a ball, right? Yeah, physically ideal world. That's not a physically ideal world, but you get what I'm saying. You can all imagine like a ball dropping, right? So when we're conducting, we want to mimic that, and then different tempos are just speeding up or slowing down that video. Or if you want to get creative, it's like you were dropping that ball on a different planet. Okay, so in the ballad, we're going to drop the ball on the moon. Okay, if in the closer, we're going to drop the ball on Neptune or something, right? It's just videos of that ball speeding up, slowing down. The same relationship with slowest at the top, fastest at the bottom, accelerate all the way into the downbeat, and slow down on the way up. That's the relationship we're going for. So what that'll look like in just a 1-4, 1-2, 1 something pattern is like this, right? It looks just like a ball bouncing. And you can predict that because you know what a ball bouncing looks like. Nice springy surface there. That's what that should look like, right? And like I said, if you can get everybody on the team to do that the same way, it's going to look great. Moving through space is super, super important, okay? Now, how to do that? I showed you what it looks like and explained what you're thinking of. How do you do that, okay? You have to think about a few things. You have the ability to move your shoulder, both rotationally, right? Rotationally and in space. And you have the ability to move your elbow, both rotationally and in space, right? When you think about it, rotating your shoulder and moving your elbow in space are the same thing. So that's one thing, okay? Conducting is difficult because there's a lot of degrees of freedom, right? Your arms are noodles attached to your body and you have to control them, okay? So when I want to get the natural gravity look, I have to think about explicitly what I'm moving, okay? And we have basically one rule and 2 guides. One rule, the one rule is you never move your shoulders in space, okay? This can be a problem with some people. They get shoulder earrings. They conduct and you see this. You get this like bouncy or something. You are going to hurt yourself so badly. Don't do that. Don't do that at all. It is so bad. Even when I am conducting, like bringing down the house, quadruple F, it's the end of the show or the ballad, you can see I'm not moving my shoulders in space. You're going to hurt yourself. It's superfluous. Don't do it. That's the one rule. Okay, the next guide is, we imagine we have a plane that crosses through our hands. Okay, the plane is this way and it goes up and down. Okay, like there's a wall and my hands are in the wall. As I'm conducting, my hands don't leave that plane or they're touching it. That's the next guide. Okay, my hands, you can see, I'll like try to align myself with this door frame here and you can kind of see it, right? My hands are either like on it or it's going through it. That's the guide, okay? And the reason why we have these guides is to get the appropriate relationship between how much this rotates and how much that rotates. Because there's a million ways I can do this, right? I'm still kind of doing natural gravity, but this is going to look different from somebody who's doing this versus somebody who's doing this. And that's why we have this guide, to get the appropriate relationship between this and this. All right, so I got that plane. It's crossing through my hands. And as I conduct, my hands are either touching it or it's going through my hands, okay? The second guide, which is important, is when I get to the top, when I get to the and count before 1, my palms are going to be facing outward, okay? That's important because you could do this. You could do this and still be in the plane, right? But you want to see this because, and if you're a lot of high school bands, you're a drum major and you probably have a white gauntlet and a white glove, or something that is very clear to see while conducting, right? So while we're conducting, we see some white, and then we come up here and it's like, boom, here's 1, it's coming next. We're at the and count before the downbeat of the measure, and you want to see that. Versus if I do this, this is not so different from this, and this, and this. You want to see, man, here's something different. This is beat 1 coming up, okay? So that's why you have this, okay? Breaking that down again, one rule, don't move the shoulders in space. You can rotate them, but they don't move in space. Don't get them near your ears, nothing like that. They stay where they're at in relevance to your torso and your head, okay? Second guide, got the plane, goes through my hands. My hands don't leave that plane or they're touching it, at least. The second guide is my palms on the and before 1 are going to face pretty much outward, not down. So that's your rule and 2 guides for making sure you have the appropriate relationship between how much these 2 things are rotating, okay? If you think about those things as you're doing this, that'll help you a lot. The next on how to conduct in natural gravity. You got to think about your muscles, of course. What muscles are you using? This is super, super important. And you can tell a lot about the muscles someone's using by looking at their conducting, right? So we talked about some other examples of movement. If you want to not think specifically about exactly how you're moving, if you think specifically about what muscles you're moving, you're probably going to achieve the right thing, right? So when I'm doing constant velocity conducting, right? So I'm here and I'm constantly moving the same speed. You can get that looking good enough, but it's difficult. What do I have to do to achieve that? Well, to get it to always move the same speed, I have to be engaging muscles everywhere, right? I have to be engaging them all the time throughout the entire time I'm moving through space. And I'm using a lot of my back muscles. Okay, I'm using big muscles to do that. We don't want to do that. One of the other reasons why we do natural gravity conducting is because you can use gravity to do the work for you. And we like when we have to do less work when we're conducting, right? Sometimes it is extremely strenuous. You know, maybe 180, maybe you're in a drum corps and it's like 220 beats per minute. You're getting your butt kicked, right? You want to make it as efficient as possible so you can give super clear time and so you don't have to, ruin yourself when you get done marching, okay? So we want to use gravity to our advantage And basically, we're going to spend all of our energy at the ictus. We're going to spend all of our energy at the ictus, and we're just going to spend a teeny bit of energy up here just to make sure that we're in the right pathway, okay? Just 1% is what I like to say. Just 1% of your energy to make sure as you're doing this, your arms aren't just flying everywhere. Just a teeny bit of squeeze to make sure they're in the right path. But all of my energy, and that's the reason why I can talk to you easily while conducting, is because I'm not really spending any energy. I'm not engaging any muscles here. I'm really just letting them move with gravity, okay? So with that said, if you look at me conduct, you can also notice my head shakes, my cheeks jiggle a little bit when I am hitting my ictus, right? And that's because I'm spending so much energy at the bottom, right? Almost all of my muscles are being used at the ictus, and that's what you want to explicitly think about as you're conducting. Okay, you can see it here. I'll demonstrate with a nice one. You can see how much energy is being exerted at the ictus, right? The muscles you want to use specifically, here's an analogy for you. You have a motorcycle and you have a semi-truck driving down the highway at the same time, and they're going the same speed right next to each other, okay? They both hit the brakes as hard as they can. Which one's going to stop first? The motorcycle, ideally, right? There's no skidding out or anything. The motorcycle, why? It's way smaller. There's way less mass to stop, okay? The semi-truck will take forever to stop. And the same idea comes into place when you're looking at which muscles to use. When I'm conducting, these are really big muscles on the human body. These are really big muscles. This is a much smaller muscle, okay? So I want to stop on a dime, or I want to change direction on a dime like I am here. I want to use my smaller muscles most. I want to use less mass, right? If I'm engaging these, I'll try and use like a lot of back muscle right now, and it's going to look more like natural gravity conducting. It's way harder, right? When I'm doing the constant velocity, my ictus is not as sharp, right? It's really hard to turn around my arms when I'm using this much muscle versus using this much muscle. So the way we think about it, we want to use our smallest muscles first and then progressively build on. So if I'm conducting a nice mezzo forte, something like this, I'm not using much chest and much back at all. I reserve that for when I'm going crazy and it's a bring down the house moment, right? And if it's really small, okay, if it's really small, like it's super quiet or it's super fast, I'm using almost no shoulders and back, okay? Nothing, just super tight, using small muscles. Here's another way to demonstrate it. I've got my finger, right? There's no muscle in your finger, it's in your forearm, but the same principle applies. I can do this super sharp, very easily, right? Now I'm going to involve my arm. This is more mass. Still kind of sharp, but you see some wiggling. Now I'm going to involve my whole arm. That's really hard, right? You have to exert a crazy amount of force to get your arm to turn around on a dime like that versus your finger, right? So we want to use the smaller part of our body, the smaller muscles, so that we have to exert less force, right? This is all about working smarter, not harder. Cool. So with that, that basically breaks down how we move through space and time. That's super important, okay? Incredibly important to think about explicitly what you're doing everywhere and not just here. Natural gravity conducting, I'll sum it up. You're slowest at the top, you spend the most time up here, and you spend the very least time at your ictus when you hit the beat, the very least amount of time. You're spending almost all your energy at the bottom, spending almost all your energy at the ictus, and just a teeny bit to keep your arms in the right place, okay? You want to use smaller muscles as opposed to larger muscles to accomplish that nice turnaround. And in terms of making sure you're in the right place spatially, don't move the shoulders. You've got a plane, your hands It crosses through your hands as you conduct. Your hands don't leave that plane or they're touching it. And on the way up, only on the and before one, your palms face straight outwards, okay? That's a good summary. I mentioned at the earliest, okay, that I didn't talk explicitly about that flick that you see, that people like to talk a lot about, right? That's because if you do all of this correctly and you truly are spending as much energy as possible at the ictus, your wrist will naturally lag behind anyway. Just because we're human beings and our wrists are not made of steel, and so long as you're not just absolutely flexing your wrist super hard and you're keeping it super sharp, don't do that. Like I said, it's relaxed. If you keep yourself pretty relaxed and you just hold this position, when I turn my arms around that violently, so to say, it's just going to lag behind anyway, right? It's like there's a nice little pressure point here. I hit it and turn around, and it just lags behind, right? Boom, and you see that. If I explicitly think about the flick and I do all of this, that's when you see this flop, because I'm adding too much. Okay, so as long as you are doing this right, thinking about the right muscles, thinking about natural gravity and spending a lot of energy on the ictus, you don't need to think about the flick. Just make sure you're not flexing your wrist super hard. No tension, no, not needed, all right? And that'll happen naturally. From there would be the patterns. That's super important. We want to be able to see what meter we're in. I've been demonstrating everything in just a 1. You know, obviously that works for very simple things, but we want to be able to show what meter we're in, okay? So
Hey, Mr.
the way
Belcher.
I conduct is, yeah.
I know we're talking going into patterns. Are these things that you feel like it would be beneficial for the kids to work through as you're talking through them? Just so
Absolutely. If they want to
what
be
a 4
up,
looks like, what 3 looks like, whatever patterns you want to cover. And I'll say this to all the kids watching. I think if you start doing this along with Mr. Belcher as he's talking through these various things, I think you'll get much more out of it. Even if you don't ever plan to be a drum major, you don't plan to conduct an ensemble, you're going to look at who's conducting and you're going to understand what they're giving you a whole lot better because you have some idea of, oh, I know what that guy's doing, or I know what that girl's doing. They're showing me this or they're showing me that. So I encourage you to get a little bit more involved as Mr. Belcher is going through this next portion of things, especially.
absolutely, yeah. This will be great. Now that we've broken down all of the thought process behind all of this, this will be great to go through it on your own and be thinking about these things. All right. Yeah, and it's great to understand like what's going on with the drum majors you're watching. That can help you better understand what you need to do to be watching and understanding what's going on. All right. So patterns here. This is important. Let's start with a 2-4. We'll start from the bottom and we'll build it up. Okay. A 2-4. I like to think of it as just a check mark. Okay. So my hands are going to go outward. I'm going to trace it. This is not actually conducting. I'm just going to trace it. You can see the check mark. This will be what one of my hands are doing. Okay. Nice little check mark. Just like that. We broke down 1-4. We're going to say we're conducting always at the same place. For right now, the ictus is always at the same place. There are different ways to conduct, and you can add flourishes and whatever, and it can be everywhere. Or you can be, some people like to use this pattern. I use it for 3-4 really fast. You'll notice there's an ictus here, but for right now, it's just in the same place all the time, okay? 2-4, just this nice check right here. We're going to say we're conducting at around a mezzo forte. So when you come up in the and before 1, come up to about your eyebrows. Okay, walk through that check. You can get your set position, boom, find your plane. We're going to come up to about our eyebrows. That's a good mezzo forte. More of a bass line or a bass point. The ictus is a point. The ictus is absolutely a point. It is a infinitesimally small point in space that you always want to hit, right? It's right there. You can see me pointing at it, okay? You always want to hit that 1 point. Let's see here. Yeah. Lost my train of thought here. Yeah. Okay. 2-4. We're going to come up mezzo forte to the eyebrows. And the and count after 1, before 2, we're going to come out at about a 45-degree angle, okay? 45 degrees, so here's 90, here's 0, 45. Nice and easy, okay? This is primarily going to be, at a mezzo forte, primarily rotation of the elbow, okay? So moving through space would be this. This would be a 2-4 moving through space. No, this would be rotation. You'll notice I let them move a little bit in space. I'm not completely rotating. That hurts. That looks awkward. It's mostly rotation with a little bit of movement, okay? So we're thinking about everything we just broke down with natural gravity conducting. This is the 2. We come up here. You can conduct at your own tempo, nice and slow. Break that down. Hit the ictus. You'll go straight out. You'll change direction 45 degrees. The height you get here, you want to be about half the height as when you were here, okay? Right before beat 1, I'm here. Everything else in any of these patterns we're going to do is going to be about half the height when you come up total, okay? This is what a 2-4 look like. Thinking about natural gravity, thinking about spending all our energy at the ictus. Half the height right there, you see that? This is about 45 degrees. I'm rotating. If you feel like you're swooping through, this is common. People swoop through the ictus. This is a strange concept for most people, to just this random, arbitrary point in space that we're just going to stop on a dime on and change directions. That's difficult to understand, and it takes practice. To get a good concept of the ictus into practice, so this is for you to practice, as you're doing these patterns that we're doing, you can do a breakdown. So I'm doing just this beat over and over again. And I can feel myself stopping right there. So I'm going to do this beat over and over again. And then I'm going to do this beat over and over again. And I can feel myself stopping on a dime here. We want to get that before we put them together. Okay? So I'm getting a lot of information to you right now, but this is a good way to practice. Break it down. I'm going to do this over and over again and feel that ictus from this place of movement, from this direction. That's much different than this, right? Practicing this, and I'm practicing this. So that's 2-4. That's really handy. Let's do 3-4. So now we're going to make it an arrow. We're going to take our check and we're going to add a symmetrical side on the other side right here, okay? And you'll come in first and then out like you did in 2. And this is going to be the exact same. This is the same picture, okay? But when you come in, after count 1, I like to have this be like you're holding a little like cheeseburger or something, but you're going to awkwardly miss your face, okay? It's like, or you're catching a football. Just a nice little open picture there. You don't need to touch. You shouldn't touch at first. I used to touch sometimes just to cheat a little bit, right? Just to get that nice little tactile feedback. You don't need to touch. Don't squish your hands together. If you do touch, it's like the teeniest thing in the world, okay? Got my nice little cheeseburger, catching a football, whatever it is. It's again about 45 degrees. And I'm not gonna really move my elbows in space. I'm just gonna rotate them. So breaking it down, you can start with this, do this over and over again. This is a really, really important one because when we get to cut time or when we get to stop time, you're going to do this motion a lot when it gets fast, right? This would be stop time. So this can be mimicked. This is really, really, really important. You get this one solid. You can break it down, do this over and over again. And this is what 3 looks like. It's going to be down, in, out, and then back up. Down, in, out, back up, okay? Just like this, slowly. This is like a mezzo forte for the tempo I'm conducting at right now. Yeah, just watch that pattern, see if you can follow along. Thinking about everything I talked about earlier, that basis is really important. Like I said, to practice at home, you can break down the pattern. break it down slowly. Okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this over and over again. I'm going to practice on the transition, and I'm going to get this over and over again. I'm going to practice the transition. I'm going to get this. Boom. Now 4/4. This is like your bread and butter. We do this all the time. Marching bands, we write in 4/4 all the time. This is the comfy one. This is home base. It's awesome. Basically, it's just like 3/4, but after you hit 1 and for beat 2, you're just going to go straight up and down again, but half the height. This is important. A lot of people will do the same thing twice, like this. They'll go 1, 1, 3, 4. You want to see a difference. Beat 1 is the most important most of the time. It's the most important, so you want it to look different. Like I said, with that white glove, white gauntlet, likely, or something that signifies I'm a conductor, look at me. You want this picture to look different before the important thing than the less important thing. So here's where I am, mezzo forte, and count before 1 and 4. And here's where I am on the end count before 2, the end of 1. Half the height. So this is what 4 will look like. Just like this. You can follow along with me for a minute here. And you can see everything that we did in 2/4 and 3/4 transfers over now. We just progressively built it up. We're thinking about natural gravity conducting. If you watch my hands, it looks like that ball, right? Especially on count 1. And then for 5/4, 6/4, anything up, there are special ways to do them, but very often it's just adding 2 things together. So 5/4, I might add a 3 and a 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6, not super common. Maybe it's a 3 and a 3. Maybe it's a 4 and a 2. It depends how the music is written, right? Of course. But anything above 4, you can just make them compound. Just add 2 things together. From there, the last thing I kind of want to talk about is stop time conducting. Super important for marching band. Okay? Super important for marching band. We do this all the time. I am pretty sure I conducted stop time way more than I conducted what we were just doing is called point time. It looks like a point, right? I'm pointing towards my ictus. I'm drawing an arrow. It's clever, right? Stop time is called stop time because we stop. Okay? For every beat that we move in an even meter, so 4/4, every beat that we move, the next beat, for the whole beat, we don't move at all. Why do we do that? We're saving our energy. We're trying to be efficient. This is for fast moments in your show. Usually the breaking point depends on the group, depends on the level, usually around 160. Maybe 180 if you're crazy, maybe 150 if you need some help. Just right around that area, I like to say 160, okay? What you do, it's just like 1 before. 1 is just like earlier. Instead of immediately rebounding somewhere, you're going to freeze. You're going to stop. So this is 1 beat, and for the next beat, I do this. Nothing. I do nothing, okay? I don't do anything. For beat 3, so 1, and I sit there, beat 2, when I hit beat 2, from 1 to 2, I do nothing. And when I hit beat 2, I pull away, okay? I pull away. It's different than before because before I was pushing down. Now I'm going to pull, okay? This is going to look like a check. I'm not actually conducting. This is the pathway you're going to take right here, okay? This is the pathway. It's like the 2 from earlier, but inverted. And that's why I said the 3 and the 3/4 was, or the 2 and the 3/4 was very important. This guy right here, this is important. Come down, I stop for a whole beat. This is important. I pull away on count 2. That's a different motion than we've done before, but we pull away. And you can practice that. This is a good way to practice. You let your hands sit here and then you pull away. Pause for a little bit, pull away. How quickly can you yank that away from the ictus? That's important because this is the wrong thing. This is what you see a lot. You see 1, 3, 1, 3. people kind of bleed out of it, right? You just see 1 and 3. We still want to communicate the same amount of information, even though we're going fast. We still want to communicate the same amount of information. So you still want to show 2 and 4. They're not as enunciated, they're not as important, but you still want to see them. Here's what it'll look like. You can see 2 and 4, even though I'm just coming out of a void of not moving. And you can see that I'm pausing for a whole beat. Now, this is much more difficult than point conducting. I have to exert a lot more energy because now I'm completely stopping and I'm starting from a complete stop. That's hard, okay? Looks just like this. You want to make sure you're stopped. Ways to practice that, like I said, practice pulling away. Also for count 4, make sure you're completely stopped first and then pull away. How quickly can I do that? I'm yanking it away, right? You're moving for this amount, you're stopping for this amount. It's the same amount of time, okay? 3, 4. I think this is the last thing I'll hit here. 3, 4 in stop time. There is some conflicting schools of thought here. There are a few ways to do it. When I was in high school, I did a triangle. So it was like this. It worked okay, but you see 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. You don't really see 3. 3 still needs some love, okay? Something that is not quite in line with some of the other things that I do in my conducting style, but I have adopted in, is the kind of rainbow 3. Really fast. This is what it looks like. And this is what I do for a fast 3, because it's really hard to find a way to enunciate every beat. This is kind of what I settle on. It's different, but it's the same idea as this. You just see every beat. So this would be the triangle. This would be the little rainbow guy. There's a West Coast drum corps well known for this style, right? But I like it for 3 because you can get it really small and still be very clear because you put space between the ictuses, right? This is a part where there are 2 different ictuses, okay? Now is where there's a different one. Right here. There's one out here for 2. 1, 2, look where I'm at, right? 1, 2, 3. So what you're going to do here, it's not a full semicircle. I'm not completely rotating. I'm just lifting them enough so that I can come down on the ictus. Just enough, just a nice little rainbow there. Okay. Another tip with this one, you can bring your hands in if you want. I like to bring my hands in a little bit because now I don't have to go all the way out here for my ictus. That's hard to do and it looks awkward. So when I come in, I'm just a little bit further in. It doesn't look as awkward as it looks right now in my set position when you're actually conducting. It's nice and tight. It's great for fast speeds. That's what this is for. So we call it a stop time 3. You're not actually stopping here. Cool. I got as much as I could in to leave a little bit of time for questions at the end. I hope that was helpful.
Mr. Belcher, thank you. That was very, very helpful. And it was really, really great to see you guys, students, participating as we went through there. I'm going to end our stream right now, and we'll come back to this because Mr. Belcher is doing another